We begin with the issues around the Lekki toll gate in October last year and the EndSARS demonstrations against the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. If you recall, tens of thousands of young people took to the streets calling for the SARS unit to be disbanded. The official version of the report into the protests and the killings at Lekki toll gate was published 2 weeks ago. The government has now also issued its white paper analysing that report, with officials still insisting that protesters were not killed by the security forces. This, of course, goes against the leaked version of that report, which ineluctably states that at least 9 people were killed. Well, for her reaction to the release of the Lagos State Government's white paper on the EndSARS report, I'm joined now by the campaigner and activist Aisha Yesufu, who's been a prominent member of the EndSARS movement since it first began in 2017. Aisha, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We know you had a busy day and we appreciate the time that you've taken to talk to us. What's your assessment of what you know so far of that white paper that's been officially released by the Lagos State Government, in which it analyzes the EndSARS panel's report and proposes some solutions?
Thank you so much, Charles, for having me. I think you said something about, is the government trying to cover up? I think the government is not trying to cover up. The government has already covered up. And for them, it's this sort of like yank the rug off their feet in terms of the Lagos Judicial Panel coming out and actually stating things the way they are, rather than the way that the government expected. I have glanced through the white paper, and it's quite funny how the Lagos State Government is ready not to accept the findings of the judicial panel wherever it goes against what they have stood for, what they're trying to cover, which is to say no killings happened. And where you saw recommendation of some officers that are supposed to face prosecution, they just simply say no, that there's no any evidence of arbitrary killings at the Lekki toll gate. So the government in itself, the Lagos State Government, is trying to play funny. It's what it has done in the last month since the killings at the toll gate, and it's actually pathetic just reading through the white paper and how the Lagos State Government is quick to say that okay, certain things are not within its power to be able to do that, which of course we do agree. There are certain things that they need to go to the federal government, for example the issue of making that day a national holiday and stuff like that, and they need to go to the federal government, they need to go to the National Economic Council. But where the Lagos State Government is supposed to take responsibility, and where it is against the stance that the Lagos State Government has taken, it hasn't done that. And I actually read the speech of the Lagos State Governor, Mr. Jide Sanwo-Olu, and that speech is absolute insult to the sensibilities of the people of Lagos State in particular, and also to Nigerians in general. The governor practically came out in a condescending manner, speaking down on the people, telling the people that they should come out for work of peace, telling the people how they should embrace harmony. It's very easy for the governor to talk about harmony and peace and not talk about justice, because he hasn't lost any loved one. The people who have lost their loved ones, who are mourning, who are still mourning, because what is most painful when you lose a loved one, it's when the government is actually trying to gaslight you and deny that your loved one ever existed. I've gone through this with the Bring Back Our Girls movement, and saying the Chibok parents, where the government of the day then said that there was no abduction. And I remember one of the mothers would ask in 2014 that whenever she hears that people say that the Chibok girls abduction never happened, she asks herself whether her 18-year-old daughter never existed. So I'm pretty sure the families of the victims of the killings in Lagos are also wondering, is it that their loved ones never existed? And so it's utterly shameful. And alluding also this issue of the governor alluding that there are hoodlums who came out and took over the protest and all of that. No, there are no hoodlums. The governor is the #1 hoodlum in Lagos State, and he brought in his fellow hoodlums to come and attack protesters who were peaceful. And we saw where they were brought in the government vehicles, where they were attacking, where the police did nothing, while the hoodlums that were brought in by the state governor and the state government were attacking innocent protesters. And we've also seen the situation whereby, first of all, where they denied that any soldiers were brought into the Lekki toll gate, and here now we are having the governor being indicted, and he is the one who asked the soldiers to come and do what? You saw one of the things that in the white paper, one of the sort of rejection that they had, where they talked about that soldiers have no business in terms of civilian action, in terms of coming to quell any protest, and the government is rejecting that, meaning it's something they've used, something they're interested in using again, and something they will continue to use. They are not interested in the lives of the people of Lagos State. And I think this is the time for the people of Lagos State and Nigeria in general to know that these people in power, they do not have regards for the citizen. And until and unless you go after what is most dear to them, which is that political power, they will continue to treat the citizens with disdain.
Well, you've made some very interesting points there. One of them, of course, being the idea of conspiracy theories, that things that purportedly happened didn't happen. I mean, we've had conspiracy theories around things like, the Holocaust and so on. But I get your point that it's more worrying when it's not just ordinary people saying those things, when it's a government saying those things. On the other hand, of course, the big issue of contention is how the panel arrived at the conclusion that 9 people died at the Lekki toll gate. I mean, there seems to be, according to the government, a big disparity between the panel saying that 1 person died from gunshot wounds at Lekki toll gate, and that comes from the pathologist, the report of the pathologist, Professor Bafunwa, and then later coming to the conclusion that 9 people died. So that's a big issue for them. They're suggesting that the panel's report is quite confusing.
Well, there's nothing confusing about the report from the judicial panel. What is confusing the government is the fact that they wanted the panel to actually support their own point of view. And let me just take this moment to commend the panel. I've said this before, I tweeted this, and I'm repeating this again. When we think about courage, we're always thinking about, it's when you stand against bullets or your tear gas. That's what courage is all about. Or when we talk about activism, and activists are only those who are out on the streets. No, what they did is amazing. This is activism at the at a very high level. They came, even though they know the panel that was set up by the government, they were ready to investigate, they were ready to hear from the witnesses, and they were ready to put out the report the way it is. And so that is what it has done now. And everything, they're going around to find everything they can to discredit the same panel that they had set up. If Nigeria was a sane country, because first of all, the reason why we're even ecstatic about the fact that yes, the panel came out and put out a report, a factual report the way it is because we're used to a nation where you either don't get to hear anything about whatever panel is set up when the findings of the panel is set up, like we had the General Sabo committee that was set up to now on Chibok girls. Up to now we haven't seen that report. And so now that we have seen one where the judicial panel is actually not forgetting whether it was government that set them up, really sitting down and following what is the way the report is. And so because of the anomaly that we have, so for me they are to be commended, and every one of us must understand that in any way that we find ourselves, we must also stand, we must always stand for the truth and for justice, and that's the only way Nigeria can be better. Coming back to the question that you did ask, there were witnesses, right, at that panel. So even if there was a young man who was actually he was considered dead, and on that day we saw live footage of that event, and even at that moment, in the middle of stress, in the middle of being shot at, when you're being shot at the last thing you're thinking about, you know, at that moment it's between your life and death, right? That's what you're thinking about. There were people who were recording and telling us that the military were actually taking bodies away. And I remember within those few hours, most of us were tweeting and said that they're trying to take away the evidence of the crime that they're committing. There's a young man who they thought was dead, and they actually added him to the bodies that they had carried, and he counted like about 11 or something like that. There are witnesses that have come forward, and these witnesses right now are being attacked. There's a young woman who was attacked viciously because of the fact that she was a witness at the Lagos State Judicial Panel. So the panel sat down and went through its findings. It beyond the body that was there, beyond what the pathologists had said, they were also witnesses, and all of these were things that they put together, and they came out with the result of the panel. Why is the government so quick to discredit the panel that it has set up by itself? Do they know that this is an indictment on themselves also? Because if we lived in the same country where a government has set up a panel, and the same government is coming out to say that there's illegality in it, especially at the federal level, where they had no business, they are not the ones who set up the panel, the state panel, but yet at the federal level, we had the Minister of Information, like Renu, we say the Minister of Misinformation, coming out to actually, you know, attack the panel, which the federal government was not the one that set up. So the panel has done its finding,
right?
And there are killings, and the nation must accept this, and they must apologize, and we must begin to have justice for the families of for the victims.
Please stay with us, Aisha. Would like to talk with you a little bit more. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the prominent campaigner and activist Aisha Yesufu. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Anyegolu. My first guest today is the activist Aisha Yesufu, whose consistent battle for truth, justice and equal rights has made her extraordinary. Outspoken, determined and unapologetic in standing up for her beliefs, she's done more than most to try to change Nigeria for the better and make it a kinder, fairer place, never giving up in her fight against officially sanctioned abuse of power. So, naturally, she's been part of the EndSARS protest movement, drawing attention to police brutality in this country, so much so that a photograph of her with a clenched fist and wearing a hijab at an EndSARS protest went viral, becoming an iconic, defiant symbol of the movement. Well, the Lagos State government has released its white paper on the report by the EndSARS panel that investigated the Lekki toll gate incident in October last year, and we are gauging Ms. Yesufu's reaction to it. And Aisha Yesufu is still with me from Abuja. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. Now, the government says that only one person died. I don't mean to beat that to death, basically, to use a pun, but that only one person died, and not on the 20th, but the 21st of October. On the other hand, the panel and a host of others, including civil rights groups, news organizations, protesters, etc., say many more people were killed, and they died on the 20th of October 2020 after soldiers opened fire at that Lekki toll gate. So basically, there is no agreement on what actually happened that night. There is no record established, is there, in spite of that panel's report?
Well, there's a record that has been established. Before now, the whole what they used to say was that let the findings of the panel come out. And today we have a report from the panel that actually indicts the government and shows clearly that people were killed at Lekki toll gate. And now they are moving the goalpost, and they are telling us that there's no evidence. There are evidence, and the panel has come out to say indeed this is what happened. And like you did allude talk about about earlier on, not just a lot of the activists that were there, the people that were there, people around there, investigative journalists have actually spoken to families whose relatives were killed on that day. And we've had people who themselves were shot. We've had somebody who actually they thought was dead, but fortunately he wasn't dead, and he was taken along with the corpses that it took away from there. From also the panel investigative report, we have seen the fact that there was collusion by lawman, there was collusion by police, there was collusion by, is it LCC, the organization that takes care of the toll gate, in perpetrating this evil. We must keep the facts as they are, no matter how much the government tries to lie about this thing. The facts are the facts, and they cannot be taken away. There was genocide at the Lekki toll gate, and it was perpetrated by the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who behaved like a terrorist government. Let me take back, who is a terrorist government that went out after its people, terrorized its people, killed its people, not only killed its people, and tried to gaslight the people from what they had seen, what they had experienced, and put them through mental torture, psychological torture, especially young people, young Nigerians, whom we ought to have given an enabling environment in this country, and that we have failed and found niches for themselves, and we continue to go after them. For one whole year, they were doubting themselves. Some of them were thinking, are they going in? So do we even understand the kind of stress we have put our young people through? But of course, the government doesn't care. All the government cares about is to kill the people and ensure that nobody says anything, and to just wipe everything away and move. And we would not allow that. And every one of them, from Muhammadu Buhari, the president, the so-called president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the so-called commander-in-chief of the armed forces, whom the buck stops at his table, and he's supposed, at the end of the day, the deployment of soldiers to that place would not have happened without his consent, and also the vice president, who sits there and encourages and enables the atrocities being committed against the Nigerian citizen, down to the governor of Lagos State, down to the what do you call it now, the AG, the Attorney General of the Federation, who came out and lied that they were not military soldiers who were there, to the then Chief of Army Staff, who first of all, where they denied that they were military had gone there, came back later to say that indeed they were military soldiers that went there, and then they came to say that, oh, they only shot bullets into the air, it was blank, they were not live bullets, all sorts of lies. Why are we even still discussing this thing where repeatedly the Nigerian government has shown that it is not to be trusted? It has continuously lied out, they've been outed, and they have recanted their statement. There's nothing. If the fact that we're still even having this conversation where we're even still trying to think that the government is actually, maybe the truth in what the government is saying, honestly, it's wrong, because this government has consistently over the time lied over this issue, and whenever they were outed, they recanted, they changed their stories so many times. The protesters who were at that place did say one thing: they were killed, they watched their colleagues being killed, they watched the soldiers taking away the bodies, and we found a lawman, the Lagos state government was sending these people to try to clean the scene, to remove the evidence of the atrocities against humanity, the crime against humanity that they had committed. But of course, as shabby as they are, the incompetence will always come through, and they left some evidence where the judicial panel were also able to pin some of these things, were able to find bullets and all of that there. And you know, we have the recommendation. Let me just make this last point. The people that should be punished are being decorated. The soldiers that the panel has recommended should be prosecuted need to be sanctioned and prosecuted. Right.
Okay. I just want to go beyond the report and the white paper itself. Not so much the white paper, but perhaps around the report, and you touched on this earlier. The governor of Lagos State calling on celebrities and activists to join him in a walk of peace with the families of police brutality. One of the recommendations of that report was for the two sides to find a way of reconciling with each other. Would you be prepared to join that walk in order to help enable the healing process?
Absolutely not. There cannot be peace without justice. The first thing that needs to happen is for the Lagos State government and the Lagos State governor, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, to take responsibility for his incompetence, for his failure, and the killings that happened of unarmed protesters who were singing the national anthem and waving the flag at Lekki toll gate on the 20th of October 2020. He needs to take responsibility. He needs to apologize. He needs to ensure that justice, they get justice, their families get justice before he begins to talk of anything about peace. And I think for me, the insolent way that he read out that statement, thinking that, oh, people are ready to maybe be seen in photograph with those in government or something. I don't even know where that was coming from. And it's an insult. It's an insult to the sensibilities of people in Lagos State, especially the people that he mentioned in that his speech that they want to be there. So Aisha Yesufu, first of all, you knew not to even call my name in such a thing. I'm not going to be part of that. First thing that needs to be done is that we need to have justice. And if we do not have justice, there's no way we can have peace. And today in Nigeria, the reason why we are where we are today is because there's no justice in this country. And we need to begin to do the right thing. So the Lagos State governor should ensure that people get justice. He should take responsibility. He should apologize for the terrorist act that he did on that day in sending soldiers to unarmed citizens. And by the way, for you to know that he is not even remorseful about what he did, he refused the part where the panel had talked about the fact that soldiers should not be brought in anything that has to do with civil matters, meaning that he can do it again.
Aisha, I hope somebody is listening to the things that you have said. I want to thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Aisha Yesufu is the campaigner and activist, and she was talking to me there from Abuja.